Well, what are those matters arising? Of course, you've heard a few of them, from the report that you just saw. But GT Ogunye joins us this morning. He's a legal practitioner to take on some of those issues and several others in the course of time today. Thanks for joining us for the program.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Let's start from there. Justice delayed? Justice denied? So far from what the little that you have heard, what's your assessment? Because, you two of those people who responded, for instance, are of the opinion that it's not significant measurement of what they were expecting from government. What's your take?
Undoubtedly, for those who have suffered grievous injury or been subjected to abuse by law enforcement agents, or those who have even suffered losses in terms of loss of life of their loved ones, monetary compensation, which in today's Nigeria is that paltry in terms of its purchasing value, in terms of what it can get, can never be this significant. For those who have lost lives or loved ones, such monetary compensation may only assuage a little bit the injury they've suffered. Those persons are not going to be replaced. But, the objective of this inquiry is not only to ensure that adequate compensation is paid to those who have been injured, adequate damages paid to them, but also to ensure, and that's more important in my view, that perpetrators of atrocities in uniform are brought to justice. Thus far, what we've seen from the panel, perhaps working within the scope of its terms of reference, is to fact-find, and then in the middle of fact-finding, take certain decisions, including making awards of compensations to victims. As a lawyer, I know that victims of injustices suffer a lot in terms of their quest to secure justice. It's a travail. Let me just run this by you. Even after you've gone to court and won a judgment awarding damages to you, your law, my law, the law of Nigeria, and I'm referencing the Sheriffs and Civil Process Act, Section 84 specifically, says that for you to enforce that against a government or government agency, if it is a monetary compensation that you can get by garnishee proceeding, you want to take the money through the instrumentality of the rule of law, the Attorney General of the Federation or the state must sanction it. Here you are. You sued a party, government, and that party, in court was represented by the Office of the Attorney General, right? Or a legal officer working under the Attorney General. But to then reap the benefit, to reap the fruit of that judgment, that party will have to sanction it. So if you contemplate that, the ordeal of a person seeking justice in Nigeria, you will not hurriedly think that these meager sums, this money that is being given to these people are not that significant.
I'm confused, Mr. Ogunye. So I sue you.
Yeah.
I win the case against you.
Yes.
You have to approve the judgment of the court that you are supposed to pay to me before you pay.
Yes, there are terrible parts of our law that are yet unamended. And we have at the center and at the state, Law Reform Commission. You have the National Assembly that are taking all the money. These are things that they ought to have reformed. From day one, in 1999, very terrible provisions of our law, they're still there. And these were made during the colonial era, essentially, to protect the colonial government
So then,
from paying, from being responsible, so to speak. But these laws are still retained because, in many respects, our state is still a neo-colonial state.
so then we'll come to that. But going back to the panels, if this is the law, and this is the experience of some of them, and all 28 states and the FCT who have panels, are Nigerians then expected to be hopeful?
I follow the proceedings of the panel, and I'm encouraged. Because, in a state where the culture of accountability is lacking, any semblance of holding public officers accountable can be justifiably celebrated. And I'm not just saying that, because, we can critique and say this is not significant, they just papering over this problem and all that. That for the first time we're having this kind of thing, and it's replicated all over the state. The federal government signed up to it, and, we see this in real time. Victims are coming forward to tell their truths, to share their agony, and we'll see all this to give credence to what we had known and believed over the years about the police, about our law enforcement. As we still speak, police are still engaged in gross extrajudicial killings. How many times have you heard that armed robbery suspect, regardless of how prevalent armed robbery is in the country, are arraigned in court for prosecution? How many times? Or cultists. And law enforcement officers feel that, look, in a country that is awash with light weapons and problems like this, killing policemen even, just for you to note, and go and check out, since this NSAS problem started with burning of police stations, virtually every week in this country, every week, it's like a culture of burning police stations are just dropped on us. Police stations have been incinerated by arsonists. Policemen are being killed all over the country. Okay, so law enforcement in that kind of environment can feel justified and say, no, we're going to take the law into our hands and all that. So what I'm saying is that given the prevalence of abuses in this climate, panels like this that shed light on the private pains of victims, save what the media is able to do, when these tragedies occur, this is significant for me. And the fact that they even giving out money in a situation whereby you may litigate and not be able to reap is significant. Right. George Floyd, just by drawing a comparison, I close, and then the victim, Chavin, all the other people are in court right now. The global audience is watching it live. Yet we've been told that the family has just been paid $28 million because there's a civil wrong aspect to it, and then there's a criminal. I'm saying that in this climate, victims died or their rights are abused without anybody hearing from them, and, without them being given compensation. I'm saying, therefore, that things like this are significant.
And still drawing some inference from that George Floyd's case. I mean, the whole world is watching, and you've seen the way it would seem the police is in on this. I mean, they're giving as much support to this whole process, tendering as much evidence and all that. But if you come back to this panel and you see, I mean, the body language of the police, yes, they have a lawyer representing, but I'm not sure there's been a single policeman that has come to give an account of what exactly happened. You recall that there was a case instituted by the police which was eventually withdrawn, and we didn't hear anything about it to seek to stop those panels across the state. So I haven't seen, by the way, I think now there's a distinction between the government which set up these panels, the police, and then the people. So I haven't seen the way the police has reacted, has responded to this. Would you say they're on the same page with the government and the people in trying to get some form of restitution, fact-finding process, and maybe find an end to this?
No. The police, quite unfortunately, from my own observation, have been rather obstructionist. Yes, they have a lawyer at the panel, but I'm not sure that the panels across the board have received maximum cooperation from police force. We have an example. A policeman, Sergeant Inspector Erin Folami, was killed on the 12th of October by the police. Yes, because that was the day a police station, the anti-kidnapping squad unit, was involved in a kind of shootings with people that they claimed were coming to invade the station. That was way before October 20, right? That's October 12. And they started shooting. And a driver on the road who left his car to go and ease himself because of the traffic or just to go and look around, was hit and he died. And the governor visited that driver on that occasion, the family of the driver on that occasion, to commiserate with them. The second casualty of that shootings on that day was a policeman himself, attached to that unit, who was coming to work, but who was shot. And he died. And his body was deposited in the morgue, right? And the family briefed us, and we represented the family before that panel. Throughout the sittings, the police didn't bring any of their own to come and give a testimony. Whereas they are alleging that it was the crowd, people that were invading, that shot and killed. Come to the panel and justify it. Come and give evidence. Give the panel the benefit of your investigation. They refused.
Because prior
till
to...
the panel closed the case after several adjournments. And so we had to address the panel, and then said, inference of law, evidence that ought to be produced by the person who ought to produce it, if not produced, is deemed to be against the person who has refused to produce, all sort of things. But they refused to come, in spite of the fact that they have a lawyer. That's a matter that concerns police themselves, not to talk of victims. That's been my observation.
Oh dear. So it's quite challenging because it now calls to question the powers of the panel. I mean, what would expect that the panel has enough power to summon a police officer to appear before it? Is that how it hits you? Or this is just the police deliberately disobeying and undermining the panel?
In a way, our police force, the way it is structured, it is not meant to be a responsive and responsible police force. And I speak carefully. It's like a police force that belongs to everybody and nobody. The policemen that you are talking about, because you are drawing parallel, the Chavez case in Minneapolis, they are Minneapolis police. That's how, in other countries, the police system is organized. Here, you are still seeing those who are in government telling you, if you have state police, they will use them to kill people. Are the police not being used, as we speak, to kill people? Are they not being used to harass people? So it is anachronistic at this time for you to still be insisting that you only have one unitary police force in Nigeria under Section 214 to 216 of the Constitution. And every Inspector General of Police that has resisted that. Anytime any attempt is being made, they give you a subterfuge. They give you a fast. They tell you community policing from the center. So, community policing from the center. How does it stand?
I know this is a bit tangential. I mean, there are a lot of issues to really break down.
I'm just telling you that the way the police force is structured is not good. So if you have, if those who are doing these things or accused of this egregious misconduct were to be LASMA, Lagos State Neighborhood Watch People, would it not be more possible for them to be brought before that panel? In a way, a federal police force or a national police force can feel that we're not answerable to a panel set up by a state government. That's the point I'm making.
Even though the state government was instructed by the federal government to set it up.
Oh, yes, yes. Even though the state government, and you not said that, kits this federal police force, buy them weapons, buy them uniform, augment the allowances, buy them operational vehicles. Even though states do this, they may feel they're not so answerable.
If this is the police force that we have,
that's our reality.
and as you said, it is structured in such a way, are we then helpless? What then needs to be done?
We are not helpless. We can't be helpless. God forbid that we should accept that we're helpless. We are dead if we so accept. What we need to do is to insist on the right thing being done. As a people, we can be better governed. We can be better policed. We can be better treated as human beings. We can be accorded the dignity that attaches to our being as human beings. And we just need to insist on that. It takes an eternity to get things done in Nigeria. All the historical injustices that have been worked into our body politic, into our constitution, into our ground norm, by the military throughout those periods, because of their commandist and centrist ideology as a military government, all those things ought to have been untangled since. The states that you are even talking about were created by the military anyhow.
But who should be the one to take the lead on this? You said it earlier that the system that we have on our hands now was instituted by the colonial masters, sustained by the former colonized people who are now self-governing themselves.
Yes, yes.
So who is supposed to take the lead in readjusting and reorganizing everything from 1960?
The people themselves. And practically, those who claim they are representatives of the people. They are the ones who said that they are if you are representing a people, as one singer said, represent them well. Right? So since you claim that you are the representative of the people, what are the yearnings and aspirations of the people? Collate them and reflect them in how you amend the laws, in how you initiate policies, in how you govern, in how you carry out the business of political representation.
So when you say that former IGPs, for example, have in some sense stood against state police,
all of them,
they shouldn't be strong enough to do that.
Look, they shouldn't be strong enough to do that. And no IG should be strong enough to exceed his tenure if he attains the retirement age. But that's what has been happening over the years.
But this is something that was legitimized by the presidency.
That exactly. They shouldn't be so powerful to do certain things. But they do this because the system, allows it. So what we need to do as a people is to look at that system and continue to insist that the right thing be done by the Nigerian people.
Well, there are so many other issues to raise with you, Mr. Ogunye, but let's take a short break. And when we return, we'll go into these other matters. Just stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Taking this further, Malpe has a question for Mr. Ogunye. Go ahead, Malpe.
Thank you, Ayo. Mr. Ogunye did say that the people are the ones who will demand a change in the system. Some people will say that part of the reason why we're seeing this NSAS compensation and the panels that have been set up was as a result of the demand by the people themselves. Why do you think that it hasn't quite resulted in the sort of change or the sort of fundamental shift that ought to be recorded as a result of that demand?
Well, sorry, good morning. I got the latter part of your question, but the first part, I couldn't get it. If you may repeat it, I'll be grateful.
Well, you said that the people will have to demand the change that will be needed to make the kind of shifts that we need in the system. Now, some people will argue that the NSAS protests came up as a result of that, of the yearnings of the people, and can be interpreted to be part of the change or the change that the people themselves want to see in their police force. Why do you think that it hasn't quite had the desired effect, to result in the fundamental change that should happen as a result of the demand of the people?
Well, the NSAS protest, as salutary as it was, by definition and by origin, was not a protest to effect fundamental social and economic changes in Nigeria. So it wasn't a revolution. It was a protest that was limited in scope initially before the bludgeoning of the demands. Specifically, it was meant to end SARS and the atrocities of the police. And to that extent, I would say that that protest succeeded in bringing to public attention and international public attention the atrocities that Nigerians have been complaining about regarding the activities of SARS. And it's on record that although there could be a mutation down the line, SARS was scrapped, as we know it. It was disbanded. So protest achieved a lot. But going forward, you know, a problem that had been with us for years is not likely to be resolved in a jiffy. That's the realistic view that I take. And at a theoretical level, if you're fighting to end a problem, and those who create the problem are there, they are still intact. They may promise you that they are going to end the problem. They may not end it as you want the problem to be ended. So in a way, if you want to solve a problem, you may also solve the problem of those who are creating the problem for you. Leadership in Nigeria, and I want to be very clear, continues to be a problem in Nigeria. Some people have argued that, yeah, we deserve the kind of leadership we have. How do people themselves behave? Those who are burning, looting, the kind of criminality we have in this country now, from the followership and all. Some people so argue. But the point is that if you want to, look, everywhere, policing is on the ballot. In the last election in the United States, policing was an issue. Policing was an issue. In Nigeria, some things are not on the ballot. What you then have is who is going to be the president now? Southerner or Northerner, or Christian or Muslim, Muslim ticket, Christian. That's the inanities that we discuss every 4 years, right? So insofar as elections will come and we don't have policy issues beyond the ballot, for example, next election, is the issue of state police going to be on the ballot? Is the issue of reorganizing the police going to be on the ballot? If it's on the ballot, people can then effect changes
while
that
a lot
way.
of people will agree with you that fundamentally we have to find ways to, put these issues on the ballot. Now, even the streamlined nature of the demands by the NSAS protesters still hasn't been granted to a large extent. Indeed, they wanted SARS to be scrapped, but they wanted it to be scrapped for a particular reason, which is to end police brutality. Now, would you say that by any stretch of the imagination, police brutality has ended or rights abuse by the Nigerian police has stopped?
No. And let me just say, it has not ended. And elsewhere, even in the United States, elsewhere, it's still continues. That doesn't justify it here. That is not a validating point, when people make reference to that. So it's not ended. But as I said, we need to strive to continue to end it. And a lot, will have to be done to actually end police abuses and injustices. In this whole process, I've also said that it's not been a one side of the coin situation. Unprecedentedly in recent times, we've also seen policemen coming under attacks, being killed, their police station being burnt, okay? So that's also a problem. And so insofar as we continue to enforce the laws of our land, fight criminality, bring people to justice, the police system will continue to be relevant. And so we need to continue to improve on our police system and ensure that while they are discharging their responsibilities, they do not abuse the rights of the people. They are sworn to protect. They are there to protect lives and property and to ensure that criminality is fought. But the people that they are sworn to protect can't then turn out to be the victims of the same police system.
Indeed, the common thread, it was same that runs through everything. I mean, whether be it police brutality on the people that they're meant to police or the other way around, I think the common thread there is rights. And only recently we saw the rights of an ordinary citizen being abused by somebody who ought to know better, at least from the visuals that we saw on tape, has been recorded on a mobile phone and has been shared widely, and even those concerned haven't denied it. Is that which was perpetrated by the chairman of the Code of Conduct Tribunal. And we also saw the report written only recently by Huriwa talking about rights in Nigeria and the current state. I think the U.S. reports we saw on the current state of rights in Nigeria. You have been at the forefront of fighting for rights and talking about, human rights abuses. How would you say that we are faring in terms of elevating the consciousness of ordinary people towards their rights, and also the response of those who have the responsibility of protecting and upholding these rights in our current context in Nigeria?
Well, the state of human rights observer in Nigeria is horrible. Nigeria is my country, and when we say this, we do not say this gleefully. We do not say this happily to condemn our country. We want to celebrate our country for all that is right and all that is good. We say this because we want to admonish those who are superintending over the Nigerian state so that Nigeria can live a better life. We had expected that after military rule, there will be a clear-cut departure from the state of rights abuses in our country in terms of preservation of life, right to life being observed, right to human dignity, etc., etc. And then interpersonal issues. People also observing the rights of their fellow citizens. But unfortunately, it's not been an El Dorado since then.
There have been those reports. I mean, Malcolm just referenced one of those reports by the U.S. Department of State. And, the way I perceive that report is that like an external audit. You have internal audit, then you have external audit. So if you've taken a look at that, the report of the U.S. Department of State on human rights in Nigeria, the 2020 report in Nigeria, what's your assessment? Is it a fair assessment of our realities, or just it pans left or right?
Well, I will react in a number of ways. First, I really wished that Nigeria is able to generate its own report on the state of human rights situation in the United States of America. So it rankles when outsiders. I know that we live in a global village right now. This is the era of globalization, and we are a member of the Committee of Nations, UN system, etc., etc. I know. And then we sign up to certain conventions and charters. To that extent, we're a human family. And so one part of the human family can then talk about what the other part is doing. I understand that. But, and I just wish that even the last election that was conducted in the United States, there are Nigerians who went there, to monitor the election there, right? So I read those reports, particularly as it concerns Nigeria, and it's usually their own way of looking at Nigeria. And this shapes their policies, their foreign relations towards Nigeria. in terms of what they will do, what they will not do, and all that. Although sometimes political detente and diplomatics may trump that, economic consideration and all that. The United States has sold the worst weapons of war to some states in the Middle East, including Saudi Arabia and so on and so forth. And Trump justified it by saying that they needed the cash, right? So, but zeroing on this, in Nigeria, that report largely reflects a sad situation. And not because they are the ones saying it, because we know that it is so. That is a summary of our state. Sometimes because we are here, and because many of our compatriots do not have the opportunity to travel elsewhere, to make a mental comparison, we do not know how denied and deprived we are. We do not know how battered our country is. We do not know the extent of what we need to do to grow our society, to make our lives better. We get used to a lot of denials, to a lot of things that we are denied. It's like if power is not functioning very well where you live, gets to a time as you are coming home, mentally you're expecting that there won't be power, right? So we used to difficult life. And so we do not really appreciate, what these rights are.
But one of the things, it's sad what he just said, but one of the things that's strongest in the report from, spading through it, is the level and vastness of impunity. And I know this is something that you have spoken about, significantly over time. Is there any way to bring that into check?
Well, there's a way to bring that, you say, and I can reference what Malkwe just talked about now so that we don't leave it unanswered. The Danladi Umar debacle in Abuja by physically assaulting somebody. I have said that, well, if you lack a code of conduct, it's all too easy to see, it's all too easy to decode your misconduct. Pun, I'm just playing on words. Look, that incident ought not to have happened. There can be no rationalization. And it speaks to the impunity that you did something, you caught, instead of becoming jittery, instead of becoming instantaneously repentant and remorseful, you justify it. And sometimes you justify it using very terrible logic and terrible language in communication for a public body. You assume that the person, Ibrahim Suleiman or so, sorry if I didn't get the name right, who wrote that statement justifying the incident, submitted the statement to the chairman to read first before it was issued, right? But what is the logic? In trying to justify it, they committed more egregious things, like profiling people, calling someone, yes, some Biafran boys in Nigeria. So that culture of impunity is there, and everything that we do to cut it, the tree is so rotund, so huge, so taprooted, that everything that we do appears to be ineffectual. And so, when push gets to shove, our people will continue to do things like what, the NSAS protest was. We just hope that society won't be really from crisis to crisis and won't have this cataclysm of things. So I believe that we really need to put our hearts together as a people.
Well, Mr. Ogunye, it's been days since this occurred. I mean, for some people, too long a period. And it seems there's this loud silence from government, for example, especially referring to the act, maybe not the statement, because we hear that the Ministry of Information has summoned that aide, Ibrahim Al-Hassan, by the way, who wrote that statement. So maybe not for the aide, but for the person, the chairman of the Code of Conduct Tribunal. Well, the NBA yesterday said that they're going to look into this and, find out. I don't know what that means, but is this case dead, as it seems? Because the NJC seems to not have said anything. The government has not said anything. There has been no decisive action, as you would expect.
The chairman of the Code of Conduct Tribunal, under the 5th schedule to the Constitution, and I reference section 15, is appointed by the president based on the recommendation of the NJC. But the same Constitution does not recognize the chairman of the NJC as a judicial officer for the purpose of the exercise of disciplinary powers over him. So the NJC cannot discipline him. So the NJC is not answerable to the NJC, right?
Even though they recommended him.
Yes, that's one of the rough edges of our Constitution.
And even though he's a judicial officer.
Even though he's not designated as a judicial officer by the Constitution, that's why they cannot. But if you look at the Code of Conduct for judicial officers, the omnibus part in terms of distribution, all the judicial officers are listed, and then at the tail end said that such other persons carrying out judicial functions, sitting on tribunals, and so on and so forth. So if you look at that designation or definition, you can say it's a judicial officer. But the point is that you expect that the government, the office of the Secretary of
Secretary to the Government,
Secretary to the Government of the Federation, will have done something because the case shouldn't be dead. My experience, however, has been that every time there's a call for accountability, the call has always come from the people. The Senator Labio, who also had an incident, who later went before a magistrate court, who was later discharged on that occasion. It was also a videotape, and the people started yearning for justice. And he came out and invoked his Christian chastity, invoked whatever and all that, and started explaining. Right. So when the people continue to push, sometimes justice that may appear elusive may not be so elusive.
But what
that's
should
why
the
I
government
say
do
that
in an ideal situation?
in an ideal situation, government should not be tailist. Government should not be reactive. Government should be very responsive and proactive. If you are in government and something happens like that, within hours, there is going to be a demand for report. There's going to be some documentation. There's going to be a decision that will be taken on whether an investigation should be conducted immediately. What we've seen is that over time, when the cry for justice is so loud, government then as a publicity stunt, not as a genuine intention to grant redress, then does something. Foot dragging always. And then it says, and when I say government, I'm not just particular about this government. I'm saying government generally. And they then say, yes, government need to get all the facts first before reacting. There is a pitfall in spontaneity. We can't be spontaneous and all that. Government needs to gather all the facts. What facts do you want to gather?
From what you know, Mr. Ogunye, is there anyone under arrest or questioning anyone other than Al-Hassan on this case?
Even Al-Hassan, has he been questioned? Has he been arrested?
At least we know
Has
that
the police invited anybody? That's the point I'm making. They said, okay, well, maybe they will shout for 2, 3, 4 days, then the shout will be muffled.
In an ideal situation, Mr. Ogunye, what should the CCT chairman, who is in the middle of all of this, what should he do himself in an ideal situation? You
wondering whether I will echo the call for resignation?
No,
I'm sorry to disappoint you. They don't resign. They are impervious to correction. When you are caught like that, the chairman of Code of Conduct Tribunal should, in terms of enforcement of the Code of Conduct, should be an epitome of good conduct. And when he's caught doing that kind of thing, there can be no justification. I'm a lawyer, and I know that people will say that, yes, you need to hear from the other side. We heard from the other side. Al-Hassan has issued a statement, and he has compounded the issue by profiling other people, right? So we've had. And so there can be no justification in engaging in physical combat, in fisticuffs, in resorting to, that kind of thing. Because if you look at it, the person that we're talking about is chairman of Code of Conduct, a lawyer, and then you have a security guard. In terms of station in life, in terms of status, in terms of, what is expected, even if that person had slapped him, he ought not to have reacted. Because he will know that the law will take its course. Self-defending himself. Like holding his hand and pushing him and all that, shoving him aside. If that person had been the person who attacked him first, not to talk of him being the person who assaulted him. And there was an injury to that effect from what we can see. So I'm just saying that that's a metaphor for the kind of contempt in which some public officers, not be all, hold the ordinary people that they are meant to serve. And it is unacceptable. The people must govern. The people must rule. The people are the reason for which you are in government.
Mr. Okunye, let me see if I could just, strip these individuals of their position. If this were to happen to other people, to individuals, okay, one hits the other, kicks the other, there is an injury. What kind of charges are we looking at in court? What kind of punishments are we looking at in court?
It's assault or criminal wounding, and we carry up to 7 years in prison. Because it's an injury to the body. Because under the criminal law, offenses are categorized. Offenses against public authority, offenses against the human body. And this is an offense against the human body. Assaulted somebody and there was an injury, right? And so people should be held to account. And for example, if somebody on the legislative floor of a house were to draw a gun and shoot somebody or beat up people, he can be hard to say that under the Legislative House's Powers and Privileges Act that he has immunity. You won't have immunity to assault a fellow senator on the floor of the House.
So being the chairman of the CCT doesn't change anything?
It doesn't change anything. He ought to be held to account.
So now, question is, Mr. Okunye, because we're gradually winding down, who should hold him to account now?
The police. The victim should report to the police if he has not done so. And I presume that Paris has done that.
But the police went to the scene of the incident, took the guy and
took the victim.
So did they still
arrested him and released him, right, on bail. So now that the police is now being told the right thing to do, the police should go, at the instance of that person, should then go and invite the chairman to a police station and say, come and tell us your own side of the story, with the possibility of preferring a charge against him. That's one level. The other level is that the government of Nigeria, the appointing authority is the president. And under the command of the president, because I've just told you that the NJC may be constrained in terms of sanctioning him, the SGF, they should write a query. And they should ask questions. And if he's found culpable, he should be advised to resign, or the president could exercise the power to remove him from office under the provisions of the Constitution by, making such a move supported by the two houses of the National Assembly. Because he enjoys security of tenure. He is that protected. He retires at the age of 70, anybody occupy that office, and he cannot be removed from office except by the concurring vote of 2/3 of the two houses. Indeed, is more secure than the NJC, than the CJN. The CJN will be removed from office if 2/3 of Senate accepts. This one, 2/3 of the two houses of the Nigerian Assembly. So the person that occupies such a secured office ought to demonstrate the highest sense of public responsibility.
Well, Mr. Ogunye, I don't even know where to begin now, but
where to end in this case.
begin because, but I'm lost for words right now. But we have to thank you very much for your time this morning, unpacking some of the issues, especially concerning human rights, which we only just stated this morning. But we have to thank you very much.
It's my pleasure.
GT Ogunye is a legal practitioner and he's joined us this morning in our Lagos studio. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks very much.